first comment would be on the site plan, and I do appreciate the fact that the site plan was included. If there's any more information available on who produced the site plan, et cetera, that would be great. It may be in the architect, but not sure from the information. There's also a large open space to the rear of the congregation, and it's spoken about early that it's a wetland and now not used, but on the site plan it too shows it as a large undeveloped open space, and I'm just wondering if they foresaw a use for that, or if the site planner just put it aside, knowing that it was wet and unusable at the time. And the other comment is just a little confusion I had. Section 8, page 21. It says that, quote, Nathan, however, persuaded the building committee to have him develop a master plan for an entire synagogue complex, not just a religious education building. So it may be in there, but I was a little confused. Was it the original intent to just build the religious education building and Nathan talked him into a bigger project? Yeah, that was just unclear to me. So that's what I have. Thank you.
This is Leah. Can I respond to that, Jenny, or should I wait?
Yep, no, you can answer it.
Okay. So it was the board, when they were deciding on a new building, the main impetus was to build an education center because they were busting out of the synagogue, but then they were kind of in their own throes of division about that. So I think by the time they went to the architect, they were even undecided about whether it was just going to be an education center or the whole synagogue. And they had thought, well, we'll start with an education center, and then the architect was basically like, well, I'm just gonna design the whole thing and you know, together. So you know, if that, and that should be in there somewhere where they started off. The first draft was this idea of just an education center, but he convinced them for a larger complex just to do the whole thing at once.
Leah, this is Jared, and I am fascinated because I think the whole complex is unique to my knowledge. The fact that they create the sanctuary and an education center together on a suburban lot, I think that's very much a part of the architecture of the period and reflected in so many other kind of non-centralized projects of the mid-60s. I think that's really important to emphasize.
Yeah, you know, and I can do that a little more, and Elizabeth can jump in here too, but Nathan, he had gotten his name really out there because of this Westchester Jewish Community Center he designed. And so that idea of making the synagogue a community center was kind of one of his things and sort of his brethren's things. And so that, I think, was part of it, that he was just like, well, this is what I do, you know, this is how it's done now.
Well, I guess my question is, are there similar examples, either locally or regionally, that could be cited? Or is this something that actually is, at the time, unique? I think that would be very interesting to reflect on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Westchester Jewish Community Center was kind of a little bit of the model. And then at the same time, he was doing the Woodbridge Synagogue as well, kind of on a smaller scale. So I guess, you know, in some ways, I would argue it was one of his first, but he was modeling it after that JCC in New York.
Right.
Actually, this is Chris. If I could jump in, one of the points I was going to make is that this is a trend in religious architecture of the time, not just Jewish. And in fact, I think you can trace it back to sort of urban kind of mission churches in the 1930s and even earlier, but especially in the post-war era in the suburbs. This idea of buildings with lots of parking, flexible planning, lots of educational and community spaces that really become a much bigger part of the whole complex. We've seen that recently in the nomination for St. Mark's Episcopal Church in New Canaan. And there's a book by Gretchen Bogeln called The Suburban Church, which focuses really on the Midwest, but brings out a lot of these suburban religious building characteristics that I think we're seeing here in Mishkan, Israel as well. So you could broaden that, and also sort of the idea of softening modernism with natural materials of brick and wood. That's also a trend in the 1950s. You see it in a lot of suburban houses of the time. And I was also going to point out one detail that's really telling is the brickwork with the horizontal courses deeply raked so that they're recessed behind the face of the brick, and the vertical joints come right out to the face of the brick. So you get these long horizontal bands. And that's something that Frank Lloyd Wright really popularizes. He uses it in his prairie houses and throughout his career, and suburban architects pick it up. And you can find it in buildings of the 50s and 60s all over the place, some of which don't look anything like Frank Lloyd Wright or even vaguely modernism. I've seen it on sort of suburban tract houses. So it's a, and I had one other question about the architecture. The congregation president mentioned, and I also saw online references to an architect named Bertram Basak, and he doesn't seem to be mentioned in the nomination any. Do you know anything about him, or can you tell us? Where does this name fit in the picture?
I thought we listed him. But yeah, we probably need to say a little bit more about it in the nomination. Did we not list him?
I did a quick search, so I didn't see.
Yeah.
I can tell you he worked for the firm of Fritz Nathan.
He's not listed on the cover, Leah.
Oh, okay. Sorry about
So
that.
we could edit the Section 8 cover to list him specifically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't have a lot from him. We had access, because Fritz Nathan was who he was, to all of his papers regarding, it was like 1,000 pages of notes and correspondence about this building and about building this building with the congregation. I'll do a search through that for his name. But I think he was more of assistance as opposed to making a lot of the primary decisions.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. It's a great place. I live in New Haven, so I know of Congregation Mishkan Israel very well, and their history and activism. So it's great to see that documented.
This is Jared, and I'm curious, Chris, the book that you cited about, basically mid-century architecture and church plans, church, synagogue, etc. plans. What was the date of the publication of that book?
That's 2015. I can
so it's a recent.
Yes.
Act of scholarship. I was curious if it was contemporary with the building in some way.
No,
I see.
Sorry, Jared.
Yeah,
that part about the community building and religious architecture. I put this. I did. We added it into the nomination that there was a book about synagogues in the 50s put out that did emphasize this trend. That was part of Rabbi Goldberg's library, and it still is. I found it in the library with sort of property of Rabbi Goldberg, which was fun. And it seemed to correspond with something he was probably looking at when he was helping consult with the architect about the design of the building.
I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah. There were a lot of books like that published in the era. The Bögeln book that I referenced refers to a lot of them. It's fascinating, yeah, to see that they've got the Rabbi Goldberg's own book right there. That really helps to give you a vivid sense of the thinking of the people as they're planning this building.
Leah, this is Jared. Refresh my mind. Do you make reference to this in the significance?
About the community center, about his
No,
access
about
to that book.
Goldberg's the publication that
Yeah,
it's in there.
yeah.
All
In
right.
my mind, it's in there. I'll look for it.
Yeah, I remember reading about it.
And I remember bringing it in for Elizabeth, and because I also just I think we ended up taking pictures. I was afraid to let it much out of the synagogue itself. It's kind of
Well,
falling apart.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you very much. Are there other comments from the review board?
Yes, Jared, this
Yeah.
is John.
Oh,
I'd
yes,
like
sir.
In 2019, before the pandemic, my wife and I took a trip to Buffalo, which has an amazing range of architecture. And one of the buildings I arranged a visit to was Temple Beth Zion, which was designed by Max Abramowitz in 1967. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is because a lot of the artwork, and not just the stained glass, but the religious artwork and iconography of inside that beautiful space was designed by Ben Shahn. And I was hoping, as a fan of Ben Shahn, that you might give a little more attention to his work in synagogues throughout the country. I don't know how prevalent it was, but he's really an important association with this building. And I just didn't want to give it short shrift, that's all. I really think it should be emphasized. I mean, he was a genius and an incredible artist. So I'd like you to take another look at that and put it in a broader context of his work in synagogues. Also, to Chris's point, when I visited this synagogue, they had a huge educational complex that was behind the synagogue. It was very much part of, I got a tour of it. It was very much, and included, in fact, a museum. And it was part of the whole campus as well. So it was another example later than yours or this one, but it was a trend, definitely.
Yeah, Ben Shahn's work is a huge point of pride in the synagogue. It's mentioned repeatedly. The rabbis have all emphasized the significance of his work and his involvement. And I do talk a lot of, I do say that that Rabbi Goldberg very emphatically insisted on his influence in designing that ark, and that they knew each other. So that has a personal connection to the synagogue as well, his work. And but I can look up what other synagogues he might have done work with. I wasn't aware of that one in Albany.
This is Jared. I think that the importance of Ben Shahn as an internationally regarded artist of the period is extremely important, because we know of a lot of Christian churches that are architecturally interesting, but may house works of art by artists, sculptors, et cetera, that bring a great deal of distinction to the whole, to the building complex. And I think this is a case where Ben Shahn is an international figure, perhaps more important in his field than many of the other players in the project. And I think that is a unique thing that this particular nomination should not lose sight of. End of comment.
Okay. Yeah, this is Cecilia. Could I just echo that and talk then a little more specifically about the social history, and Ben Shahn is very much connected to the progressive causes that is mentioned in the narrative, which I think is extremely complete and impressive. I did not know all these things about this congregation. And for that alone, for recapturing the social history, Leah, I thank you. This is certainly the beginning of could be a larger historical project in amplifying the progressive trends in the New Haven area. So I defer to the architecture. That's important. But the social history just really adds to the extent of the significance. And Ben Shahn having one foot in both progressive causes and another foot in architecture, artistic significance, I think just brings it all together for me.
I just want to recognize Elizabeth, who this was her capstone. I took her capstone and developed it. She did a lot of the base research. Obviously, I'm a member of the synagogue also, so I was there as consultant and with a lot of the architectural stuff. But I want to recognize her as part of this. But in addition to what you said, Cecilia, we do plan as a congregation to capitalize on this nomination and really push this story and this history and the architecture and the integration of the social history with the architecture out as part of our anniversary celebration. This is 2021 is 60 years from Martin Luther King dedicating the space. So we're going to try to make a big deal about that.
This is Jared, and thank you, Lee. And I do think that, not to beat a dead horse here, but I think it would be very important perhaps to even look at some of the scholarship of museum and art curators and the role that Ben Shahn played in that world, and cite that, because this is what culture is all about, and the influence, as Cecilia has pointed out, is extremely important, particularly if you're going to use this to create more support for the congregation and its responsibility as maintaining this project. So I think it would be very helpful.
Can I just add one thing briefly? And Cecilia's point is really well taken, because Ben Shahn was incredibly sensitive to social causes, and this is such a good example of his work that I think it needs to be beefed up. I really do, in terms of his significance, not just the historical relationship with the rabbi, but, I'd just like to know more of the story of how people came to him, what they expected from him. I don't know if there's any scholarship on Ben Shahn that would help enlighten you and make this so you're not reinventing the wheel. But I think it would be easy to find out what's been written on him as far as his artwork in buildings.
Well, our own synagogue library has quite a bit on him because he's a big deal for obvious reasons in the synagogue. And I have even one of the books on my shelf right now. So I don't think that should be an issue. I'm not sure how much is in there in terms of his specific work within other synagogues, but yeah, certainly look, and I have no problem beefing him up. I don't know whether, since it was the stained glass, he should be, listed beyond the narrative as part of the architecture or not. I'll take your comments about that. But we could certainly pull him out and beef up who he is more in this.
This is Jared, and I would suggest that you get in touch with the Museum of Modern Art and their archive, and I bet you will learn a great deal of Ben Shahn that nobody has discussed this morning. And I think that might be a source of great interest, particularly to your congregation, because there has to be a vast amount of scholarship and curatorial explanation for a lot of his work. I won't say any more. Thank you.
In terms of, this is John again, in terms of level of significance, and this is just, I'm just floating an idea, I'm not recommending it. You're putting it at the synagogue at the local level. Is Ben Shahn's association with the project enough to give it a little higher level of importance? This is an honest question.
Well, that was going to be my question too. That was, that was something I was going to do in consultation with you all and Jenny about what level of significance.
Well, you'd have to make the, excuse me, it's Jared, you'd have to make the case by revising the document to do that. And I personally would recommend that you consider it.
And maybe after you do the revision, this is John again, and have a better sense of Shahn's significance to this project in relationship to others, then maybe you could reconsider that level of significance in Connecticut.
This is Cecilia. I'm not quite sure. Did he do all of the design of the stained glass or just particular parts of it?
He did not both sets, but in the sanctuary, he designed the whole arc.
Oh, okay.
The whole bima area.
So it doesn't include like there's a horizontal.
Into the chapel. That's somebody else.
That's somebody else. Okay. Because it's
also noteworthy. Who's also noteworthy in his own right. But Penard. Yeah.
The other person.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I'm just curious as to what design influences there were, and I'm speaking completely out of my depth here, in terms of uniqueness of the design. Was Ben Shahn just doing sort of, well, this is a one-off from something I've already done, or was there something specific that makes it special? I guess for me, that would be a way to distinguish between whether it's local or a higher level of significance, but I have no expertise in that part at all. So,
in the Buffalo Synagogue, he designed more than the stained glass. It was the menorah,
right.
The whole.
This one too.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
He had a very. Yeah. It was a comprehensive. Application of his hand in the religious observance of this building.
And then we've talked about, and I know Michael knows about this, there was a lot of conversation between the congregation and Rabbi Goldberg and Shahn about who should be listed within the stained glass. Like there's in terms of prophets and modern prophets like Albert Einstein and alongside, the biblical prophets. And that was all very specific to CMI.
Mm-hmm. There was apparently some spirited debate as to whether it should be Spinoza or Freud who would be named as one of the modern prophets.
This is Stephanie. I really enjoyed reading this. Thank you guys for pulling together the documentation. I think the use of the manuscript collection made for a really rich nomination. So One recommendation I had, it's clear that the building has a high degree of integrity, but I think the integrity statement could be enhanced by directly referencing the 7 aspects. I think it's easy edits, but I just think it would strengthen the statement. So, but overall, I thought it was great.
Thank you.
Okay, review board, are we ready for a vote? Or are there further comments that need to be made? Shall I ask for a vote?
Yep, so moved.
Okay, all those in favor?
Jared, we have to do a roll call.
I beg your pardon, that's right.
So
Do the roll
I'll
call.
I'll start with Phil,
In favor?
Cecilia,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Okay, that's all in favor. And I will just note that for our guests, you are free to leave and you are welcome to stay. So it is up to you. But this concludes Congregation Mishkan Israel discussion.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Leah,
Thank you.
particularly.
Thank you. And again, thank you to Leah for all of your hard work.
And Elizabeth.
Thank you, Leah and Elizabeth.
Now let's move along to the next nomination, which is the Canaan Pine Grove Association in Canaan, Connecticut. And I need a motion to review the nomination. Moved. We need a second.
I'll second. Cecilia.
Cecilia. Excellent. All right. It's yours, Jenny.
Okay. Okay. So this is a 67-acre property that was established as a religious meeting camp in 1871. There are 73 resources that are counted here. 68 are contributing, and that includes 55 cottages, a chapel and a community house, and we're also counting the site. So we're counting the landscape as one site. It is recommended for listing by staff under criterion A for both religion and social history, for its associations with the camp meeting movement, and also social practices during the late 19th and early 20th century. And it is recommended under criterion C for the vernacular camp meeting property type and the landscape character that was common to meeting camps. It also meets criteria consideration A as a traditionally religious-based property. The period of significance is 1871 to 1971, which is the establishment of the camp on this property through the 50-year cutoff date. The nomination was initiated by the Pine Grove Association, which is the owner. The association actually owns the land, so it's not individual cottage occupants have a share, but the ownership is by the association. So the notice went to the association and also to the town of Canaan. And I did go out in July of 2019 when most of the association is present for the summer, and did a public information meeting then. Canaan is not a CLG, and we did not receive any letters in response for this. And I just want to note also that we are going to be restricting some of the locational information in this nomination. The Park Service has a process for redacting the public copy. And the reason that we're doing that is because there have been some issues with trespassing and damage to the property. So for the final copy that gets archived with the Park Service, there will be a redacted version. And Randy Walton from the Pine Grove Association is with us this morning, as well as Susan and Stephen Klein, who are consultants for the nomination. And we may have some other members of the association as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. This is a dream nomination. So I would like to ask Randy if he would like to say a few words. We will talk with the Kleins, but if he would like to introduce himself and give us his thoughts, we're welcome to hear him. Okay. We will then turn to the review board, and we need a motion to review the nomination.
I'm Randy Walton.
Oh, yeah, please tell
I'm
us.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a little unfamiliar with Microsoft Teams, but I found the right button. Yeah, I'm a member of this Pine Grove. My family's been there for a number of years, and it's really a special place. And before I get any farther, I do want to. Jenny was just fabulous in presenting the idea of getting the place listed on the register. She was very patient. She came out not only and met with the community, but she came out and helped us look at and evaluate when Steve and Susan Klein were out there, and she just could not have been greater. I just want to tell her how much. Thank you so much for all that you did with us. I got involved I'm an architect. I was raised in Connecticut. I happen to live out in Fort Worth now, and I've done a number of architectural guidelines for communities. And so the president of the association asked me if I'd be on the architectural review board. And I said, absolutely. It's something I do a lot and would want to protect everything. Sorry. And so I got to thinking about what it was I was trying to protect. And that's when the suggestion of coming up of getting this place on the National Register became important. One, it's a truly special place architecturally and from a community, and it really just deserves that recognition as that. Second, it would help establish a time frame or a significance that I could judge whether modifications were appropriate or not. We didn't really have that, and this sort of would fix that for us. The third is that it is a fragile place. There's a lot going on, and if we were to lose some, I think it's not all in compliance with current codes and zoning. And if we were to lose some, we now sort of survive at the pleasure of the building inspector, and would like a little bit of the historic muscle that comes with a listing to help preserve what we have there should something go awry. And we're going to come up on our 150th anniversary this summer, and I use this as a great opportunity to try and compile and archive all the photos and histories and documents that were out there and collect them all in one place to put this nomination together. So I thank you for your time. I think it is truly worthy, and I appreciate your consideration.
Randy, thank you. That's very, very helpful. And compliments to you for what you are doing and what you've already done. Any other members? Well, I guess the Kleins are the others, and we will talk to them as the consultants. So unless we have, let's see, do we have our motion to review? And it's seconded. And Jenny, why don't you introduce the consultants, and then you can tell us the criteria, et cetera.
Well, I did an introduction. We've had our motion. So Susan and Stephen Klein are on to answer questions and to hear your comments.
Great. So it's time for the review board comments. So jump in.
I have a comment. This is John Herzan. This is, speaking of muscle, this nomination is full of muscle. I mean, it is so thorough and thoughtfully written and approached from so many angles. It's really an impressive document, and I think it'll be very helpful as a reference to your review board. My only question, and this comes from my background as being a National Register coordinator, is the historic name of the place. And really, it's a technicality. Throughout the nomination, it's referred differently at different points in time. And when you're writing, I can understand why that happens, but I really want to nail the historic name of this place, because an association to me is not a place. It is a legal mechanism for management. It's ephemeral in a way. I'd really like to, like other campgrounds are known as campground or camp meeting place. When the nomination we're looking at for the property in Enfield is coming up, it was the name of it was a company, but the consultant called it a factory. I just would like to associate a building type or a district type in the historic name that is justifiable based on it's what it was known as. And I realize it's administered by an association, but I would like to ground that name a little bit more so it seems like a place, not an organization.
Thanks, John.
This is Susan Klein. That was something we discussed about with the association and with Jenny. And I think one reason we chose that name is part of the association's wish to, not send out red flags as to what they are and where they are. If we put camp meeting in there or campground, they like this other name because it's a little more anonymous. I could let Randy address more if he'd like to, but we did put a lot of thought into the name, and that's why we came up with it.
Well, I think, John, Randy, do you want to clarify?
It was, I don't know that I really know all the finer points of all this. The association was concerned about being able to be identified, located, and people then inundating it. So we tried to kind of minimize that ability, to give everyone comfort that we weren't going to be run over. Of course, I think most people who follow this stuff aren't really the vandal types, but that's my opinion. So we're happy to modify it any way it needs to be modified. And yes, it was first founded as a camp meeting and was very much part of that whole movement. So let me defer back to the president of the organization and we can see what he has to say, if that's okay.
This is Jenny. I think we can work out any particular text that needs to be redacted. Maybe that would solve the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think, Jenny, your recommendation is right, and I think that John could be helpful because of his years of experience and the fact that Connecticut has several campgrounds that aren't already on the National Register, and perhaps they would be worth looking at to see how they are named, and perhaps there's a generic way of dealing with it.
This one is particularly intact. It's probably among the most intact that we have in state, and its location is isolated just enough where it's quite susceptible to the trespassing issue. But we can take care of that with, what gets filed publicly.
John, would you be willing to act for us and assist in that process if they need it?
Of course, but I would like it to be true to its historic name.
Correct.
That's what would inform my feelings about it. If it was called camp meeting, which is a phrase that's used a lot in the nomination, but meeting also is sort of ephemeral. It talks about a gathering. I'm looking for something that will ground this as as an object or as a place, and I'm not sure what the right word is historically, but I'd like to explore that with Jenny. And
okay, the one thing that occurs to me is, Randy, is there a familiar term that's used by the residents? Do they refer to it as the Grove or?
Yes, sir. They call it the Grove or Pine Grovers. Yes, they're called Pine Grove. The address is Pine Grove.
Well, maybe that's the way to do it, is to call it the Canaan Pine Grove.
But the historic name doesn't necessarily have to identify the town that it's in.
But if you Google Pine Grove, that's what comes up.
Well, that's pretty obvious then.
Yeah.
So maybe those two words are.
If you Google Earth it, that's where you get the location on it.
I just don't think nominations are going to be, I'm not sure that how it's named will impact people wanting to trespass there because of its proximity to roads. I think too much importance is being given to that problem with respect to the naming of the place.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Okay.
Anyway.
I mean, point well taken.
Shall we return to the nomination, and are there other comments from members of the review board?
Well, this Cecilia, I would just, this is totally foreign to me. Though it's kind of interesting that two religious institutions are coming up one after another. I never thought Connecticut was quite, well, I take that back. Connecticut is extremely religious. The fact that you've connected this religious camp meeting phenomenon to, in fact, the Chautauqua movement in the early 20th century is a very interesting one, and for me is what really sealed its historic importance. It's not just people at a campground, but rather that's involved in a larger intellectual movement that is well recognized nationally. So I'm perfectly happy to give this Pine Grove Campground a historic register setting.
Other comments?
Yeah, this is Chris. I've got a few sort of random small things. First of all, I want to just thank you so much for two aspects of the nomination. One is the description of the sort of the atmosphere within the Grove on page 6, which is just a really well done, evocative landscape description. And I think Phil Phil can talk more about the importance of landscape, but that's so important for these kinds of places. The idea of the Grove being a gathering place, and the efforts that are made to preserve and refresh the trees was really great. And also the comparison with the other camp meeting sites around Connecticut. I was sort of doing that in my head as I read the nomination and thinking, you really need to compare this to some of these other places. And lo and behold, you did. So thank you. That's great. In the chapel, just a little picky thing, you talk about pointed arches over the windows, but they're not really arches. That you might call them, gables that suggest arches or something. The practice of listing real estate in a wife's name is something that I've seen quite a bit in the 19th and early 20th centuries. And I think it's done fairly often, sort of if the husband's in business and, thinks that there could be the business could fail or something, and then creditors or somebody might come after the property. If it's in the wife's name, there's some degree of protection there to not lose your home. And you refer to photographs of African Americans at Pine Grove, and if it would be possible to include one of those in the nomination as well, I think that would really make that point much more vivid. And then 2 items of terminology. One is you talk about it being south of the town of Canaan. And I think you're referring to the sort of the village of Canaan, which is in the town of North Canaan, which is one of the more confusing place name as situations you have in Connecticut. So it's in the town of Canaan, but it's south of the kind of built up place that there's not really a proper name for, but please find something other than Canaan for it. And then the Methodist, references to Methodism and Methodist churches. The Methodists changed their names frequently. During the 19th century up until the 1930s, it's called the Methodist Episcopal Church. And so if you're referring to the denomination properly or a specific congregation, you should say Methodist Episcopal. And then it's Methodist Church from 1939, I think, to 1968. And then there's a final reference after 1968 to a particular congregation, which would be a United Methodist Church. And then I've got a question. Page 46, National Folk Architecture. You refer a couple of times to mass planned or massed planned. If I can find the thing, and that's the term I'm not familiar with. I don't know what it means. A massed planned 2-story side gabled shingle style dwelling and a massed planned national folk pyramidal style dwelling.
This is Susan again. What I was referring to, most of the cottages are basically single rooms, one rooms. The master plan is like 2 rooms wide and 2 rooms deep or larger. So that was what I was trying to convey, is that it was bigger and, more delineated into rooms and that type of thing. So, we could take that word out if you would prefer.
So, I mean, it's just a term I'm not familiar with. So either it might benefit from some explanation, or maybe I'm just ignorant. And also you have mass, M-A-S-S, once, and then massed, M-A-S-S-E-D, a second time. So that may add to my confusion. So thanks.
This is Jenny. I think you could just add a definition there or add it in a footnote would be one way to take care of it.
Right. Thanks. That's mine.
Other review board comments?
This is Stephanie. I have something very small, but section 8, page 39, the middle full paragraph, there's a discussion of the cost of the stock and then escalated to $2020. It appears that the proportion is not the same, so I would just check the figures and make sure that that escalation is correct, if I'm understanding it properly.
We can certainly do that. This is Susan.
Thanks.
Okay, are there other review board members' comments?
This is Phil Barlow. Just a couple comments.
Yes, please.
Certainly agree with Chris on the importance of the landscape and the fact that it is well documented and well described. So well done there. I think equally important to all this, to the architecture and the landscape, the planting, is the site plan. Again, the site plan and how these cottages were laid out. So you do provide in the documentation the surveyor's map, which lays this out. So presumably, the surveyor was the one that did the site plan and laid it out. So perhaps he could be given some credit as one of the architect builders. Again, since that layout is so important to the function and the use of the camp. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
In that case, Jenny, do you want to do your roll call number?
Sure. Phil,
Yes.
Cecilia,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
John,
Yes, enthusiastically.
Mark,
Yes.
Chris.
So it's
You're
unanimous.
muted, Chris, but I see your mouth moving.
I see.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you.
So we are unanimous in the approval of the nomination. Should we jump to the Etna Diner and then?
I just want to say thank you all. We appreciate all your efforts, and we appreciate you helping to preserve this place. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a motion to take up the Etna Diner nomination?
Enthusiastically, yes. I've eaten there a number of times, not recently.
I hope not.
I don't know if it, well, is it
Do
still?
we want a second? I'll second it out.
Is it,
Sorry,
it is
who was
actually,
second?
is it still a working diner?
No, it's abandoned.
Oh my God.
You'll hear about it. Who was seconded?
Jared.
Jared. Okay.
Okay, Jenny, now.
Okay. So this is a prefabricated stainless steel diner manufactured by Paramount Dining Cars of New Jersey. Was transported to the site in sections and placed on the site in 1948. And it was connected to the brick kitchen, which was built on site at the same time. It is recommended for listing at the local level by staff under criterion A for commerce. It represents typical changes in the diner industry during the mid-20th century, and in particular, increase in size to match the broadening customer base for diners. And of course, it is also recommended under criterion C as an increasingly rare specialized building type, which we have few examples of, especially in Connecticut. The period of significance is 1948, which is the date of its placement on the site, through 1970, which is when the owners rebranded the diner as a more traditional restaurant. And I will just note that there is a photo key that will be coming that's being worked on. The nomination was initiated by the owner, and the owner is doing a rehab project on the property. Notice was sent to the Hartford Mayor Planning Zoning Commission and Hartford Preservation Alliance. CLG response was positive from the Historic Properties Commission. You saw earlier this week that we received 7 letters in support from Richard Gutman, NINA, which is the Northside Institutions Neighborhood Alliance in Hartford, the Connecticut Main Street Center, the Hartford Chamber of Commerce, the Hartford Community Loan Fund, the Hartford Business Improvement District, and the Capital Region Development Authority. Wayne Benjamin, who is the owner of the property, is with us this morning. He can answer your burning questions if you're curious. Mary Falvey from Hartford Preservation Alliance, I think, is on. Mike Farino, who wrote the nomination, is with us. And we've also been working with Richard Gutman, who's an author, historian, and diner restoration specialist, who's been advising on the history at my request. I think Richard might be with us this morning as well. And Richard also has provided some additional edits and given them to Mike Farino, which we will get to in the next round. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Now, members of the audience, if you would like to comment, please feel free to do so by identifying yourself first, and I'd be willing to listen to your comment. Not hearing anybody speak up, I think we'll now turn to the review board for their comments.
Excuse me, Jared, you can't see it, but I believe Mr. Benjamin has his hand raised.
Oh, I can't see him. My apologies. sir, please identify yourself and speak.
Unmute, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the board. Morning, guests. My name is Wayne Benjamin, and I'm the owner of the property. We bought the property back in 2017, and from that time until now, we've been doing both design work and environmental investigations. Our plan is to rehab the building, renovate it, and bring it back to a restaurant during its glory days. This property is significant. It is in the Marshall Laurel Street Historic District in the city of Hartford. I myself have a great deal of experience working in the city of Hartford. I served as the city's economic development director from 2010 through 2015, and have worked on a number of projects that actually went through the nomination process. Just to mention a few: 777 Main Street, the old Hartford National Bank, and also a Colt project, which is the only national park in the state of Connecticut. So with that kind of experience, I brought it here to see exactly how I can rehab this building and bring it back to life, as I indicated before. I left the city back in 2015 and have been doing consulting work since then. The former owners of the property approached me in order to do something that you would not have liked with the building, but I got religion and hearing the two churches before me, and that certainly put me in the right context here. So without saying any more, what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Mike Farino and David Arai and Eric Lepachel are the ones who actually were working with me in getting this project moving forward. So I want to thank you for your consideration and look forward to answering any other questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne, very much. Are there other members of the audience who wish to speak? Okay. Review board members, comments, please.
This is Cecilia. I didn't get to the very last part of the discussion here. And I left the neighborhood 20 years ago, so I haven't, I haven't been there since. It's a very historic, situated building, and really gives you a sense of what that strip of Farmington Avenue looked like. And the whole street, I think, well, I don't know what it looks like now, but that streetscape needs to be preserved, I think, as an example of how a mid-sized city expands itself. And also just, the design is very unique, and there aren't that many left. And what I really did like, though, about the nomination from the social history point of view was the discussion of the immigrant origins of, the first owners are 3 Greek immigrants. And so it points then to turn of the 20th century into the early mid 20th century avenue for immigrant entrepreneurship. And I think that's just something that needs to be highlighted, and in general, but specifically for this site as well. So I appreciate that addition.
Thank you very much. It's Jared, and I have a couple of comments. In the nomination, you cite I would call institutional landmarks in the neighborhood, but I'm curious as to what names you assign to them. In 1948, there was no building or no institution called the Mark Twain House and Museum. It was called the Mark Twain Memorial, but that was an organization that occupied a house that, if my dates have to be checked, but I believe it was never open to the public as a period house until much later than 1948. At that time, it was the site of a branch of the Hartford Public Library on the first floor, and it was an apartment house upstairs and in the carriage house. The Stowe Center didn't exist in 1948. I believe Ms. Day was still alive, but that should be double checked. I think it was in the 70s that it became known as the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center. And then the other thing that I think is important here is that in that period, there were 3 prominent restaurants within a block of each other, diagonally across the street from the Etna Diner was the famed restaurant called Scholar's that existed there until about 1970 when it moved out to West Hartford. And then there was something a block to the west on Farmington Avenue, and I think it was called the Maple Shade, and it was a kind of a sandwich shop. And I think those 3 restaurants were highly successful because it was a concentration of restaurants of varying degrees and were extremely popular with the population in a much broader part of the city. So those are my observations at the moment. Mm-hmm. Other review board members.
This is Phil Barlow. I've got a couple comments. First of all, I too love the Etna Diner. I know it as a comment, and I lived across the street for many years and was a frequent guest there. But a couple of things that jumped out at me, and I may have missed them. One, I didn't see any explanation of why it's called the Etna Diner originally. Of course, we all know that perhaps, but I think there needs to be maybe some discussion of the proximity to the Etna. I got a little confused in reading the history. It wasn't clear to me about the original diner, so maybe some more needs to be said about the original diner and how it was replaced by this diner. Again, I may have missed it, but that wasn't clear to me in going through the nomination. And then the other comment is minor, but the photograph, section 9, page 33, it's a great picture of the diner, an early photo, but it has a large canopy coming over the steps. I don't believe that canopy is there anymore. And again, I might have missed it, but I don't remember seeing any mention of that canopy in the history description. Thank you.
This is Mike Perino. I'm happy to respond if that's okay, Jenny. The canopy photo that came to me relatively recently, so that change hasn't been made in the description. So you're absolutely correct to note that omission. As far as the name of the diner, I had not found any evidence that they named it because of the proximity of the insurance company, but that could be assumed. But because it's an assumption, I didn't mention it. The previous diner, there was a smaller diner similar to ones that I talked about, a small one-person operation diner there. Not a lot is known about what that facility looked like. I wasn't able to find any photos or map, and to answer the previous question about the landmarks in the area, that was meant to be a discussion about what's in the area currently, not contemporary with the diner, but I could see how that would lead to some confusion. But if you are interested in me putting in a section of what was around the area when the diner was built, I'm happy to incorporate that as well.
Other review board comments?
Yeah, this is Chris. Maybe it was me reading a little too quickly. I got a little confused about some of the etched or materials on the windows and mirrors, which were old and which were recent. So just double check that. And then you refer to a ventilation slide that's on the windows. And if you have a photo, that would be a cool thing to include. It's interesting. I have seen similar sorts of things in houses from about that period. There was this brief moment where they were sort of separating the two operations of a window, light and ventilation. And so I've seen houses where you have plate glass windows and then these sort of ventilation hoppers underneath them. So it's interesting to see it in a more mass-produced situation as well. That's it.
Other comments from the review board?
Yeah, this is Mark McMillan. I had, in reading the interior description narrative, let me start by saying I think the Etna Diner definitely merits listing. It's a very compelling property, but there are some places I think, particularly for a building type like this, effectively a mass-produced diner coming out of New Jersey, that we could really start to tease out a little more of the significance. And where I see the opportunities there happening are, talk about the design. You do mention later under criterion C discussion that it was a very large diner. It was made of the 3 cells that were joined. How do those relate to the interior layout of the diner? What is the floor plan? What are the booths? That can tell you a lot about, is it all bar stools? Is it family style where you would have a very large booth? Is it two-person seating? All of those elements are part of the design that are really part of the significance of this type of property. And threaded throughout the document, there's always this reference to, Paramount will help you design to your needs. What were those needs? Who are those people? Who are you serving? Where are they coming from? There are kind of references here and there of, trying to cater to, office and day people, but also attracting a changing clientele, families, others. Really tease that out. Why did they build the kitchen annex separate from the diner, and what was the layout of that? If you could talk about, if you know what elements were in the kitchen, that reveals a lot about what the function of this thing is. Was it a giant, 15 burner stove? Was there a deep fat fryer? What kind of food, what kind of things were being prepared here? That reveals a lot that would take this from something that could contribute to the thematic resource that Mr. Gutman, documents in Massachusetts, just another diner that falls into that, and brings us into an individual. Why is the Etna specifically important? What makes it different from everything else? And then I just had 1 or 2 minor questions. The figure 7, the advertisement for Paramount Diners. Do you know where that is? Because when you read the narrative and it talks about it, servicing one of the largest insurance companies in the nation, that sounds like it could be Aetna. But looking at the photographs shown in that advertisement, I'm not sure that is the Aetna. Mm-hmm. So if you could just clarify. I mean, because if it is the Aetna, that could be a really important point to highlight in your nomination.
Yeah, thanks so much for the comments. That, again, was a very late addition, that advertisement, courtesy of Richard Gutman, who I'm very thankful for adding some of those photos and the advertisement. But certainly, your point is well taken to try to tease out a little bit more about the interior layout. A lot of it, at least from my research, is not known, the original layout, other than the elements in which I described, but maybe I need to do a better job of describing them in more detail.
Actually, Mr. Farino, you have in section 8, page 20, there is a pretty good description of, the size, the number of booths, and how they were laid out. My suggestion is if you could just extract some of that from section 8, page 20, and move it up into your interior narrative, you wouldn't have to do really any additional work, just maybe reorganize that.
I see. Thank you.
Oh, this is Jared. Mark, I think that your observation's correct. I just don't know how a diner can be produced in 3 sections. And if there isn't a diagram or some visual to show what the 3 sections were and how they were assembled, I simply couldn't figure it out. And it, of course, is referred to as a car because it's referencing obviously a dining car on a railroad visually, but I'm not sure it ever was a single unit, and you make it clear there were 3 parts. Well, which 3 parts? Was it like a hot dog cut into 3 pieces, or was it slices of front elevation, back elevation, and a central section? I mean, it's totally unclear what are the 3 pieces. I don't want to beat a dead horse here.
No, sure. This is Mike again. Happy to answer that. It was split longitudinally, so the long way, in 3 pieces. So the hot dog, as you will, not horizontally. Older diner cars were split horizontally, but in order to fit on the train beds or on the truck beds, they needed to be split the long way. And the middle section obviously would have limited structural integrity, so temporary walls were used to shore up that middle section.
Does anybody, this is Jared again, does anybody know where any diagrams from Paramount exist that show what their product was that was sold to the individual that had it brought to Hartford and erected? So, it'd be very helpful if there was an industry document that said this is how diners are manufactured, and then they're put together, and then when they're finished, they look like this. It's that kind of missing information, and we're dealing with something in 1948 that must have been very technically documented, like buying a product at Home Depot. You get an instruction sheet sometimes to tell you how to put it back together or something. But I think it would be very helpful to establish a level of documentation that is more than social.
Jared, there is a patent image on page 30. We can certainly ask if there's more drawings available.
Yeah, I had a comment about that because that was the typical 2-section patent, whereas the claim is made this was, well, if you look at one of the historic photographs, the largest in the world, that 3-section really made it as big as you can get. But that sparked the question of, structurally speaking, if you're just looking at this as a structure, there has to be some place where those 3 sections were stitched together. And did that become a natural place for, this is where the bar counter is going to go, or this is where we will put the dividing line between 2 sets of booths? Structurally, it should inform how the layout of the interior goes. So yes, that would be really helpful to see a 3-section.
Yes, and I think to Mark's point, to explain the independently constructed kitchen, it's implied that that originally the Etna Diner had a cooking counter behind the serving counter, and that was inadequate, and they decided to modify the interior and build a separate building attached to the back for a much larger and more appropriate place to cook. And that would suggest that in the first phase, they served sandwiches and hot dogs or whatever, a fixed menu that could easily be prepared behind the counter. But then somehow they got a larger clientele that wanted more and different kinds of food, and they couldn't do it, so they had to build a kitchen to accommodate the new menus. And so I think there's a whole narrative in there that's unique to the Etna Diner as a place within a block of the Etna. Maybe the Etna didn't have in-house food service until one of their wings was added in the early 50s, and then suddenly Scholar's, the Etna Diner, the Maple Shade restaurants were all serving the Etna employees, thousands of them, once a day. So I think that's a lot of areas of exploration that really haven't been given here.
This is Mike again. I'm happy to elaborate a bit on that. So the brick kitchen addition was built the same year that the diner was put in place. So presumably they were aware that they would need a larger space. So it wasn't a transition that happened after and a modification that happened after. That back bar counter that's referenced in the nomination probably would have been more like a prep station as opposed to a full kitchen, if that makes sense.
Yep.
In fact, actually, you have a great point about the expansion of the clientele, and I think that's why that's the reason the old diner was replaced with this larger structure, because more people were coming, and they opted for the bricked kitchen to remove the space in the diner that would normally be taken up by a kitchen to increase the seating capacity, while still kind of cashing in on the novelty of the diner instead of building another structure entirely. Thanks for your comment.
Okay, do we have any other review board comments? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call the question. Review board members, all those in favor, you have to ask Jenny's roll call. Sorry.
Okay. Phil?
Yay.
Cecilia?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chris?
You're muted.
Chris, your vote?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. That's everybody.
Oh, that is everybody, and thank you. It's a unanimous vote in favor. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. We've got such an interesting bunch of nominations this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Wayne. Appreciate your being with us, and we look forward to seeing this project advance. Okay, Jenny,
Thank
now
you.
do you want us to turn to the discussion of Westfield Plate Company's nomination?
I do. Sorry about that. So Stacy Vero is on with us this morning. She's a consultant for the nomination. Sorry about the noise. And we would like to still hear your comment so that the nomination document can be edited and finalized to be as good as it can be as a record. Obviously, since the building is lost, there is no reason to vote on this, but still worthwhile finalizing this text.
This is Jared in observation, and I think it would. Hello, Stacy. We miss you.
Hi. Sorry, we're here under these lousy circumstances, but
Yes, very lousy. I just wanted to observe that if you were going to edit this, I think it would be very useful to identify where you want to comment about specific features of the building or the layout, the architecture, of the use of functions. You seem to, not you, but the nomination seems to repeat in numerous times the same feature. I think I've never seen so many examples of the word pilaster. And, you know, yes, where do you want to talk about the pilasters? So, but you don't talk about the fact that this was rebuilt as a fireproof building. Irony, irony, irony. But it was. And where are the expansion joints in a, 300-foot building or whatever it is, 200-foot building? There are elements that are faced when the building was replaced. I mean, the current building was built to replace a burned down, probably wood constructed factory. And all those features that you describe are fire safety features that are exactly contemporary with the date of the building of this factory. So I think those are all my comments, and I apologize for not preparing a list of them, but I think that gist of my observations.
Your point was very well taken, Jared. I will cut down the descriptive portion. The factory that it did replace was brick originally, so that's one thing to note. But yes, definitely, I will work on that with Jenny. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I'm Jared again. I think you're referring to these sliding fire doors that are in party walls that were obviously supposed to contain fires. And if I remember correctly, there was a counterweight that was held open by a piece of metal that would melt at a certain temperature, would cause this to melt, and suddenly the doors would slam closed. And I think the type of door that you're referring to was called a calamine door, and was used universally throughout Hartford buildings of the same period as recognized fire doors. They did not burn down, and they would hold fires back, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there were a number of features in this building that hearken to the demise of the earlier factory.
Thank you for that. It's just a shame that it ended up like that.
It certainly didn't save this one.
Yeah, well, I wonder why.
Well, I'm assuming the fire looked very suspicious to me as a lay person.
This is Stacy. There's no electricity in the building, so yes, it would seem to be suspicious, but we don't know. There's an investigation undergoing now. There's a current investigation.
This is not unique in recent history in Hartford. The big Royal Typewriter Factory mysteriously burned on a Sunday morning. But what was even more mysterious, we had plans of the factory. On a Friday afternoon, a gentleman who looked very much like Santa Claus came to the office and said he was working for the then owners of the building, and he needed prints of the floor plans of the building. And we weren't suspicious, and he just left with 5 sheets of paper that were the 5 levels of the building. And on Sunday morning, there was a huge black cloud on the southern horizon, and guess what? It wasn't Santa Claus.
Oh, Lord. I could tell stories about Bridgeport and New Britain as well. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Review board, we have to look at the nomination.
Yeah, this is Chris. I'm not muted for once. I just, first of all, the concept of glass coffins really kind of blew my mind. I didn't realize that there was call for that beyond, deceased communist leaders. But
Snow White.
and oh yeah, Snow White too. Okay, good. And just the structural implications were kind of mind-boggling. But more substantively, I mean, the whole concept of industrial development and kind of specialization of small manufacturing companies that produce parts for a larger item that is assembled by another company. You certainly see a lot of that with the carriage industry in New Haven. And I think maybe some of the arms manufacturers as well. So it's just an indication, I think, of the growth in size of industry that various industries diversify themselves this way and kind of break themselves down into specialties. So it's a good example of that. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, other comments from the review board?
Can I just say that Mike Farino also is responsible for this nomination too. He worked with me on this. It's Stacy.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, that reminds me, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to make a brief speech for this and for the Hartford Etna Diner. Mike Farino and Stacy Vero are my colleagues at Preservation Connecticut, but their work on both of these nominations is as private consultants, and so Preservation Connecticut, where I work, has no direct involvement with these nominations and is not benefiting from their listings. So I wanted to sort of make that public. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. We applaud Preservation Connecticut for having Stacy and Mike on their team, right?
This is Cecilia. Could I just say that the what I was missing in this presentation is mention made of the larger complex in Thompsonville, but yet there's no maps making it clear what the relationship of this factory is to the surrounding factory setups. I may be completely out of line here, that it's not actually, doesn't look like it's near anything other than the railroad line. But the narrative makes it sound like it's very close to some of the other factories. So I would like that cleared up. And if it's appropriate to have a map, that would be great.
Sure, we can clear that up.
I'd like to, excuse me, it's Jared. I just want to point out that on section 7, page 4, at the end of the paragraph, the so-called summary paragraph, there's no period. And you get to that point because you refer to and the Bigelow carpet, and there's nothing else.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So where is the Bigelow carpet, and what are you talking about? Mill, or you talking about a rug?
Company.
Yeah, I thought that was the thing.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll fix that. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, also, I just have one, again, I'm hung up on names of things this morning. I apologize for that. But throughout the text, throughout the nomination, you refer to on each page this property as the Westfield Plate Company Factory. And I just wondered if you could add that to the name of the property on the first page, Stacy, because I think especially now that it's been demolished, it's good to know the building type that it was.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that, John. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the nomination? Jenny, turn it back to you. Do you need more information from the review board?
No, we just wanted your edits so that Stacy can hand this final document over to the town for them to have.
Okay. Is our next item to turn to number 4B, the review of eligibility status of the National Register listed properties?
Yep, and I think we have one person who got dropped who wanted to say something about the comment. Is that okay?
Oh, yes.
Deborah?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, okay, I'm sorry. This is Deborah Gaston. I'm the Secretary for Historic Preservation. I just wanted to say, when he mentioned Scholars, I jumped because I remember Scholars. And also, my parents live in that neighborhood. So, when I go and visit them, I walk the neighborhood, and I was standing out. This was not too long ago. I was standing in front of the property there, and someone came across the street and said, "Are you buying this?" And I was like, "No." I said, "I'm just reminiscing," because before it closed, we used to do happy hour there. So I'm glad something is being done with it. I just wanted to mention that. Like I said, I got disconnected here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so yes, so we're on to agenda item B. So I will just introduce that, as you know, we just approved a policy statement for these reviews back in December, which is posted on our website. You are being asked to look at 3 existing listings and confirm the current status of properties which are proposed for demolition potentially or in conversation for that. We do notify the owners of this meeting and provide them a link to the policy statement. And we do have some guests with us today. So Todd Levine is also here from SHPO and will introduce and discuss each item.
Oh, great. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let's begin with the first of the 3, which is Clinton, 151, 153 East Main Street. They're both listed as contributing resources to the Clinton Village Historic District, listed in 1994. One is a corn crib with a number of additions attached to it, and the other is a residence, which is a 2.5-story, circa 1800 federal clapboard house, identified as, let's see, okay, hold on, I'm sorry, I got lost here. Right, so 151 Main Street was once 153 Main Street, and they changed it. The corn crib, which is now 150 Main Street, or 151R, was once 155-157, and was used as a flower shop with these additions that are built behind it. They are listed under criteria A in the categories of community planning and development as an example of coastal town center, a particular settlement pattern associated with the development of Connecticut towns along Long Island Sound in the 18th and 19th century. It's also listed under criteria C for as many historic buildings that embody the distinctive characteristics of several styles of architecture, including the vernacular of the 18th century New England, the Federal style, Greek Revival, each of which is represented in numerous well-preserved examples. And yes, so we've been to the site. You have pictures to determine your opinions on eligibility.
And Jared, I think we actually need a motion in a second.
Yeah,
for this.
I will. Let's do that. We need a motion.
I can move that the review board goes on record that these buildings continue to contribute to the Clinton Village National Register District.
I second the motion.
Okay, there we have a motion. Do you wish to discuss it, Review Board? Hey, Review Board, do you want to discuss the nomination? Excuse me, do you want to discuss the agenda item as proposed?
I think this is John. I was actually involved with the delineation of this district
Right.
back in the 90s. And this building is very prominent in the district. And it's part of the pattern of the main street in Clinton. The houses are very close to the road. I think it would be sorely missed if it were demolished.
Other comments? I have a question.
This is Cecilia. I have a and maybe John can answer this. I'm just looking at the aerial view, and there doesn't seem to be much of a center in this Clinton Town Center. And so I was wondering what the streetscape looks like.
It's a very linear district. They don't have a classic town green. They have a little triangle, which is the local historic district in town. But it's a little bit like Madison's district. It's very, well, Madison does have a large green. I take that back. But the commercial area and before that is also very close to the street. And that's the pattern of placement of buildings in Clinton for the most part. The town hall is a fabulous colonial revival building down the street. And there is sort of an open space diagonally across there with an old schoolhouse and I think a church. I don't remember it's been a while since I looked at that area. But I do remember the main characteristic of the main street that is designated in Clinton is that the houses are close to the sidewalk.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's still a village.
Right across this. Okay. But
Yeah,
it's surrounded on both sides by what look like condo complexes. That was my question. If the street is so altered, what does it mean that so this is like last man standing?
Yeah,
Just me looking at the aerial view.
Yeah, I looked at the street view earlier. Some of these buildings that have parking around them, expanded parking, they are contributing buildings in the district. So their landscape is a little iffy. But yeah, losing this house and outbuilding would really kind of cut the district in half, I think.
This is Jared with an observation. Looking at the aerial photograph, unless I'm confused, where it says 151 East Main Street superimposed on the photograph, it doesn't look like that building has a big rear addition. And if you look at the last photograph which shows the rear of the federal house, there's a whole kind of 1950s one-story wing. Is that standing or not? Was that torn down years ago? We don't know.
I think that addition is there.
No,
It's
the
just
addition is there.
lost in the aerial view that merges with the trees in the photograph.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm using a high-powered glass, and I can't see it on that aerial view. So I was just curious as to whether it still existed.
Okay.
Here's a question. I mean, clearly that isn't part of the historic fabric for which the building was put on the nomination. But how do we deal with it?
I'm sorry.
It's an addition on the back. I don't think it detracts from the house's significance or integrity.
I agree.
One-story pool house, and I don't see any scenario that that addition
Oops, somebody's cut out.
buildings are demolished or.
Todd, try again. You sort of froze there.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that that addition. I think it was put in the 70s. It's a pool house. Can you hear me? I think of trying to load up my Google Earth while I was talking, because I also want to note that from the district, from this particular site, is not a part of the district. So this side of the road, the north side of the road, is in the across the street of this site.
Say again.
Yeah, we only got
It is not. This is
the edge.
The north
Directly
side
across-
of the road is in the National Register District, and then the south side of the road. So if you're looking at the aerial where you see Stanton Road,
Yeah.
that southern portion is not within the
It is
district, but the
not.
northern
Oh,
portion
okay.
is.
That was Marina.
Sorry, yes, that was me.
Okay. So we have a motion that all of these are significant, that all of these structures are a component of the historic district.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Was it Chris? Did you make the motion? Do you just restate
Yes,
it?
I did. I moved that the review board go on record as affirming that these properties continue to contribute to the significance of the district.
Before we vote, Keith Ainsworth is here and has his hand up. We didn't call for public comment.
Correct, we didn't. Would he like to speak?
Go ahead, Keith, if you're on.
I would like to speak if I could. I don't mean to interfere in the process, but my name is Keith Ainsworth. I'm an attorney in private practice in New Haven, and I represent the owner of the property that's under consideration, which is Resync Properties Solutions. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I wouldn't want the board to make a decision based on, I guess, misimpressions. One, there was a statement made that the loss of the building might cut the district in half. This is actually at the far end of this district. Most of the buildings or the structures within the district are at the far western end of about a mile away. There's about another quarter to a third of a mile of this district. This is the one of the last buildings that was actually noted in the nomination form. And in fact, this building was not itself noted in the nomination form with a photograph. So the comment also earlier was made that this was a prominent portion, structure within the district. And while there were many photographs in the nomination itself back in the 1990s, this building was not one of the ones that had a photograph that was included, like many of the other structures. However, a couple of the buildings beyond this one were. So I should note that. There's also two buildings here. We're talking about a corn crib and a house. And the corn crib was not actually original to the location. This was not a farming property. It was a property that apparently was a merchant house. The corn crib was brought there sometime after 1970. Because it doesn't appear in the aerial photographs until after that time. That corn crib, while it is noted in the nomination form as a contributing structure, and I hate to say this, it may have been an error that it was noted as a contributing structure at the time, because it's clearly a 19th century corn crib, but was brought there at a much later time. And has been severely altered. It's got an addition itself onto the corn crib that is a shop of no particular note, and architecturally or historically. And the corn crib now has windows in it and planters attached to it. So it's not exactly in original condition. So I would think that at least if you're making a determination whether that structure itself contributes to the district, you might consider that it probably never did. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments on the comment?
I have one comment. Jared, this is John.
Yes.
The fact that the photograph, it wasn't photographed, is really irrelevant, because nominations often include representative properties. They're never required to document every house through photographs that are in a designated area. The point about the corn crib is interesting. I certainly feel that the addition is non-contributing. The corn crib, I think, was classified as contributing by the consultant because of its age as a historic resource. Through history, buildings get moved around. It's a known fact. When I was doing survey work in Newport, it was very frustrating because these buildings are moved around like Monopoly blocks, over time. So I'm not sure. I think the integrity issue of that building could be reassessed, and I'm not sure we have enough information to assess its current condition. But the house is clearly within the period of significance of the district. It's very well preserved. The interior shots just hammer that point home loud and clear. The shop, I'm inclined to question as to that. To me, I'd just like to know more about its period of construction and so forth. Maybe Todd could speak to its specific history a little bit to clarify that point.
Sure. So the corn crib is, it's a mortise and tenon, probably square rule constructed structure, which the actual corn crib, the interior, while I don't think there's very many pictures, there might be one or two on this document that show, you can see the square rule construction, mortise and tenon on page 11 of the document that you guys have. That the corn crib has good integrity, in fact. But you're right. All the additional buildings were, they're 20, 30 years old. So and not in particularly good condition anyway. Certainly not contributing. While we are negotiating with the owner and trying to find a solution for saving this and another building, this and the other building. A number of organizations and people have come forth and offered to move the corn crib to their site. So there might be a potential for that in the future.
This is Jared, and I just want to emphasize that these accessory buildings that are so often just ignored, I think it's very important that if they survive, every effort should be made to make sure that they continue to survive in whatever condition. And I would not feel that the integrity of the main house here would be affected negatively if the corn crib was no longer on the property. It's not original to the property, and it was brought there within the last 50 years. But if it left the property, I don't think it would compromise the importance of the Main Street house.
Yeah. This is Chris. I looked at the nomination. There are a couple more properties. I think 3 more properties to the east of this, so it's not the absolute end of the district. As for the corn crib, I would clarify my motion to refer only to the corn crib, not to the additions that are appended to it. But, you know, it was considered contributing in 1994 or whenever, and I don't think I would be inclined to change that without documentation to show that it was improperly considered contributing then, you know, and until we see that it's contributing and it is not materially changed from its condition at the time. So
this is Jenny. In a historic district, there's more flexibility for relocated buildings to be contributing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Jenny, now what is our next item here? Not in terms of a change of nominations, but what do we need to do? We have a motion which stands unnecessary to alter that motion, so
okay.
I'm inclined
I
to
guess,
ask for a vote.
Do you want to do the two buildings separately or just do them together?
Yeah.
Well, Chris, do you want to speak to that?
Jenny.
Oh, Jenny, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, muted myself.
Oh.
Do you want to consider the
Yes.
status of the two buildings together or separately?
Chris, what do you think?
I don't see a need specifically to separate them.
But you do want to modify your nomination.
I just want to say that the house and the corn crib, but not necessarily the corn crib shop, modern shop additions. Yeah, just the corn crib itself.
Okay, so do you want to restate your motion?
Yeah, my motion is that we affirm that the house at 151 East Main Street and the corn crib at 153 East Main Street continue to contribute to the significance of the district.
I second
Okay.
that motion.
Yeah.
So moved and seconded. Any further comments from the review board? Hearing none, let's have a vote. All those in favor?
Roll call, Jared.
Yep.
Okay, I'm not sure, Phil Barlow, are you still on? He had to go at 11-ish. Okay, so Phil is out. Okay, Cecilia?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Chris?
Yes.
Okay, that's everyone that's on.
Good. All right, let's take up the house at 1 Old Kings Highway, and we need a motion.
This is Mark. I so move.
Okay, and I'll second it. You got that, Jenny?
I'm going to turn it over to Tad.
All right, so 1 Old Kings Highway in Norwalk, listed in 2009 on the Silver Mill National Register District. It's described as a vernacular circa 1812 structure with additions, alterations circa 1925 and 1980. It is significant under criteria C. It's numerous, the district is. It's numerous extant examples of 18th and 19th century residential, industrial, and commercial architecture, as well as a few examples of 20th century historical revival residential and arts culture buildings. It's also significant, the district, under criterion A for its contribution to the broad pattern of local and regional history for its early mill industry, and locally, regionally, and nationally significant for its later incarnation as a notable arts colony and cultural community. Further, the district is significant under criteria B for at the local level for the association of the Guthrie family and the other silver mine mill owners and the industrial development of Silver Mine. The building is wood clad, asphalt shingles, and a number of additions that you can see off the main block to the side in the photos that were attached. We've been at the site. The integrity of the historic fabric is clear.
Todd, can
Okay.
you describe the context of the building? How close is it to other buildings? Do you know? I have a hard time reading the map, the Google map.
Yeah, it is, kind of just in a residential neighborhood. There are buildings that are across the street and down the road. And it's within the district, so it's a residential neighborhood.
Yeah, this is Cecilia. I had the same question. The map doesn't give any indication of its relationship to actually Silver Mine Center.
Yeah,
And
Silver Mine is kind of across, behind it and across the little stream is where the kind of the main built. All these they're contributing. Everything around it is mostly contributing, but
okay. Well, that's not clear at all from.
Is the stream, excuse me, Todd, is the stream behind the property visible on the aerial photograph? Is that what it is?
Yep. So if you look at the aerial photograph,
Yeah.
Page 14, directly to the west, you see a little body of water, and that's the stream.
Oh, all right. So this is on the water, as it were.
Yeah, it is. The location is beautiful.
And the road frontage in front of it is very close.
Indeed. Yep.
Okay. What is the relationship of the Guthrie family, and why are they mentioned?
Marina, can you hop on that?
There's no direct mention. Just the district is significant under B for Guthrie family. That's how it was listed in the nomination. This house does not have specific reference to the Guthrie family.
Okay.
Exactly.
That was confusing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Can I just ask?
It would really help. Could I just say it would really help if it was a little more delineated on the aerial map. The boundaries are of. Is it in the middle of the district, on the edge?
Yeah, since this has come up a couple
I'm
times
not sure
today.
that matters much, but we just.
Hi, still, yeah, I have not done that. And in fact, for all of these, I have that exact document that you're looking for already prepared. So I do have that handy. I'm not going to try to put it up now because I'm having some internet issues. But in the future, I will include where these buildings sit within their district.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other comments from the review board?
All right. So we have to take your word for it that it's how significant it is.
Todd,
John?
do we know, or Marina, this is John, do you know anything about the specific history of this building in the context of the theme of Silver Mine? Was it the home of an artist? That was very active in the community, or is there anything we can hang our hat on to give it historical significance? Its architecture, it looks like a house that, while it's old, has been reworked quite a bit.
Yeah,
and
that's correct,
I'm just
John.
trying to figure out what other areas of significance we could hang our hat on. I mean, it's clearly its age falls within the period of the district's significance, but I just wondered if we knew anything else about it.
Sure. So the nomination does not make any elaboration on which artist or author resided in the house. it just makes reference to the house, the original block, its age. We can surmise that because there are additions from around 1925, the nomination does have a list of properties and then the significant individuals that are related to them, and this is not one of them. But we can surmise that an early addition, around 1925, is in line with the other artists that were moving in at the time. There's just unfortunately no specific person associated with them. Mark also very kindly put in the chat, if any of you can see it, the district nomination and then a zoom of the area. So if you look at it, you see the Silver Mine body of water. It is on the east bank, so the west lot, the western portion of the lot slopes down to that body of water. And as Jared mentioned, this property is very, very close to the road. And it's also the additions get very, very close to the northern property line where it abuts another contemporary property, if any of that is helpful.
Contemporary meaning modern?
Contemporary meaning modern. It may at one point have been an older property, but recently, unfortunately, there's not a lot of good digital street views of this area, so you actually have to go to see it. And when we went to see it, the property to the north looks like it has been substantially either reworked or completely rebuilt.
This is Jared.
Marina.
Yep.
Sorry.
Go ahead, John.
No, Marina, from your site visit, did you feel that its absence would be missed in the streetscape in terms of continuity of historic structures if it were torn down, or did you?
So if you, yes,
to the streetscape?
I think that if this was absent, it would be a loss. We're at a corner. We're at a three-way intersection here, so it is a corner lot. And as I said, it's very close to the road. So as you approach it, that is what is in your view shed, right at the edge of the road. So yes.
This is Jared, and I'd just like to have a discussion about possibly how the present house evolved. And I'm assuming the origin of this structure is somewhere in the middle of it, is a 1.5 story, what we might call a Cape Cod shape, small house. And the only photograph we have is of the rear corner of the compound as we see it here. And it looks like the actual front of the original house probably was on the road. And that in the 20s, it was, the entrance was put on the back, as it were, where the view down to the pond made it a more private point of entry. And there's a kind of lean-to shed that was added. There's a bay that was added. And it even looks like, let's see, which is east and west. It looks like along the south, there was an addition up to, but not up and including the ridge pole of the house extended further to the south. Is that right? I mean, do we assume something like that? Because the chimney, instead of being serving a fireplace or fireplaces on the first floor, there's a chimney, a rather big chimney, at the north end of the building, which obviously was part of probably a 20s addition. So the house has no front door on the street anymore. It's all in the back. It is what it is. And
yeah.
Well, I mean, the side that we see, the front door, the door with the little porch on it, that's facing the street. So, and I think that's what's, the front door now. And to be honest, I'm not sure that this really matters for our purpose now. I mean, the building was deemed in its, in 1990, in whatever, to contribute to the district, and it's not been altered.
Well, Chris, I don't agree with you because I wish we had a photograph of what the street front of the house looks like.
We do.
Yeah, so that first picture on 13, the black and white picture, that's from the nomination, is what it looks like today. That's the street view.
That is the street front, yes.
Yeah, that's the street front. So what you're seeing, that's what you see when you approach from the road. When you drive up, that's what you see. That front door actually is going out towards the street. There is, a rear door, but that's not what this is. This is on page 13. The front main entrance is still the main entrance to the building. Actually, they come in from the side, through one of the additions, because that's where the garage is. But the main entry is still there.
Okay, so what I'm misreading is the back of the house is still the front of the house?
No. So the front of the house is still the front of the house. The back of the house, I don't think you even a picture of the back of the house. Everything you're seeing is the front of the house.
Okay, if that's the case, on the front of the house there are two doors, and you're saying the door that is closest to the viewer is the front door.
Yeah. They got two front doors.
The wing extends to the right.
Yes.
And then ends up with a garage, which is accessed by driving around and behind or something.
Yeah.
I think the garage is a separate building that's off the photo.
Yeah, and they use both. I mean, the newer addition where that wing is to the right that you noted, that's where the kitchen is.
Okay.
It's kind of where the addition.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I just was quite confused. But I think that the photograph that you're describing is very important. That shows us how it contributes to it's a public face to the street.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's right there, and it certainly is contributing to whatever's going on across the street or up and down the street.
Yes.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
This is John, about the district. I mean, this was largely an artist settlement, not originally, but it evolved into one. And I sensed it was attractive to people, artists and others, because of its scenic qualities near the river. And a lot of the buildings, when I did this nomination started when I was still working at the state, but it took a while to materialize. But my impression of it when I did my site visit was that it's not a collection of classic period houses. It's a collection of old buildings that have been adapted in many ways because of the scenic beauty of the area. And in that sense, I feel this house fits that pattern of development. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, I think this is Jared, and I am convinced now, looking at the elevation here, that where the present front door is a partition that filled in a front porch. You see the shed roof just stopping at the sill of the window at the dormer?
Yeah.
And it looks like that was an open front porch, and then it was enclosed either in the 20s or later, and the front door moved out to the front of it.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Is that material to the actual integrity of the building itself?
It's
I'm
50
totally
years
ignorant.
old.
Okay.
Yeah.
In 2006, it was considered contributing in its present shape. And therefore, I personally think it still is contributing.
Yes.
I support that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, are we ready for a roll call?
Yeah.
I'm ready for lunch, actually.
Only one more to go.
These meetings are supposed to end at noon, aren't they?
That's up to you.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jenny, give us a roll call here.
Okay, Cecilia,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you. Now, Todd, give us Thermos Avenue's special
Yes.
of the day.
I sure will, and I'll be brief. This is a 68 Thermos Avenue Building 85. It's contributing to the American Thermos Bottle Company Laurel Hill Plant, National Register District, nominated in 1989. The structure is just listed as 1861 office, and is contributing other criteria C and A. C for a good example of 19th and 20th century textile mill design, and A as a primary factory for the production of thermos bottles.
Okay. Todd, I'd like to point out that the photograph, there's a map of the arrangement of buildings that's dated December 5 someday. And it identifies the building under discussion as number 86, not 85.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll straighten that out.
And it's referred to as the Human Resources Building.
Oh, I got the wrong building then, don't I?
85 is the office building where
Yeah.
that is.
Okay, I'll straighten that out. Thank you for pointing that out.
And it is an Italianate house, is it not? That was renovated as
It is. It's described as a two-story brick Italianate house built in 1861.
correct.
Yes.
Right. And that's,
With no-
is that the only building in the complex?
No, there are.
Yes.
So in the chat is an bound to AGU is a boundary of the district, and circling in the circle is building 85, the Italianate office building.
It's 86, not
Or
85.
It's 86.
Yeah, we have to straighten that out.
I had the hardest time finding the propane sheds, and then I realized they look like pet graves over in the corner.
I can't find the chat myself. Oh.
you click on the comment bubble where your icons are, and then the chat should pop up on the side. Should be near your video camera and microphone.
Can we continue with our discussion?
Yes.
Do we need to start with a motion?
We do.
We do.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right. For purposes of discussion, I move that Review Board affirms that the Building 86 it still contributes to the historic district.
Okay. Do I have a second?
This is Mark, and I second.
Sorry. Yeah.
Good.
Excuse me, shouldn't we refer to its address in the motion?
Fine. 68 Thermos Avenue, Building 86.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's 85. I'm sorry. It is 85. The office building is 85.
Yeah.
How come the plan calls it 86?
Yeah, so what?
So
what is,
the highlight is incorrect. So the highlight should be closer to the right. So you see 85 connected to building 2 in the north. That's the building. And then so 85 main office building. You see it?
that's where the mistake is. So it's not just the red square on page 19 that says 86. That's not it. If you go to the right, directly north of building 2 is 85. That's what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Whoa, okay.
That,
Sorry,
and that's why the
I'm
photograph
lost.
looks right.
All right, so Chris, if you go to page 19, everything is correct except this document, which is why everything is screwy. It is building 85. It's not, the red box shouldn't be around 86. It should be around 85, which is just to the right of that.
Yeah, we're on you. We're with you.
Okay.
No, I'm, so are we talking about the White House?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's
But it is actually-
item 85.
And not the attachments, not the attachments.
Well, so the building was nominated with the attachments on it.
Or are we talking? Okay, so we are talking about the whole complex.
Yeah.
Oh,
The three buildings, so they appear to be three buildings conjoined that are called 85.
Correct. Yeah, my apologies for the confusion.
but I'm also looking at the sketch of the map, and they seem to be attached at the back to so-called storage buildings, and number 3 is then the manufacturing building.
Correct.
Are we talking?
We're talking about
all?
just 85.
Oh, okay.
Which is just the Italianate with the additions to the east. Right? Is that north south? To the right, anyway.
Okay, Todd, we're with you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, review board comments.
Well, my question is, if 85 is going to be altered or demolished, what does that do to the rest of the buildings in the back?
They made thermos bottles. I don't know.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, just for the integrity of the site. If you take that away, you take 85 away.
Yeah, the only thing, I mean, we have not been on site yet. We've been trying to schedule for about a month, and we need our structural engineer to get out there with us, and she's been very busy. So we're hoping to get out there in the next couple of weeks. I don't know the answer to that until we get out there.
Could I ask a question about the photographs? When were they taken?
The color, I think the color photographs were from 2019.
Okay, I only have black and white copies, so I'm sorry.
The black and white.
Jared, the black and white photos which go from page
the interiors
19. Yeah, the ones that go from page 19 to page 22 are from the nomination, so they were taken in 1987. Okay. And then the photos that start on page 22 were taken in 2019.
There is the date in the photo caption, but just so you guys know, the mailed copies of the packets were only printed in black and white.
And they don't have pages.
There's also no pages. So, and the fact that there's no numbers attached to the photographs is very unhelpful.
Confusing.
Yeah, we'll correct that in the future. My apologies. I didn't realize you guys didn't have digital copies. I forgot. I should know.
Some people do. Some people use the PDF in color, and some people use the black and white printout. But if you look at the packet, as Marina said, the caption where it says 1987 at the end, those are from the nomination. And then the photo captions that say September 2019 are September 2019.
13. Oh, there's 213 and 190.
Yeah,
okay.
The last one was 2013.
So we don't have a recent photograph of the exterior.
Yeah, we have not been on site. I mean, we've talked to the owner. I mean, they've expressed that this is what it looks like. So.
Okay.
Excuse me. I think we have somebody from the owner on the call. Maybe we should ask them to speak before we discuss. That's our usual pattern.
Yep. Would you identify yourself and make your statement, please?
I'm not sure we actually do.
Oh, I know we did, and
Okay.
it was a phone number, so I don't know what the phone numbers are.
Well, a couple of you are on the phone.
Yeah.
I don't think Ellen is on the call any longer.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, Todd, do you want us to discuss this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Chris, do you want to introduce your thought here?
I mean, certainly as far as the exterior is concerned, it's very much contributing to the district and looks unaltered. It's a little hard to tell about the interior, but this being a district, interiors are less crucial. So it looks okay to me.
It's
the one.
Go on, John. No,
the one that I'd like clarification of, and I agree with what Chris said completely, is that I don't know if the structural integrity of the building should inform our decision. If something is, I mean, if it were really in major distress, would that affect its continuing status as a contributing building? It's more of a question than a comment.
Well, as one of the newbies here, my question is whether that obviously it's contributing if you look at the exterior, but the interior is, according to these photographs, is quite dilapidated. I'm not what. So, John, you're saying that we need to weigh in on the exterior, not the interior.
No, what I'm concerned about is the structural integrity of the building. I agree with Chris that, you know, its Italianate form and its history with the thermostat, those are all contributing elements. Yeah. I just didn't know if there was some engineering problem that we are not aware of that could factor into our deliberation. But if that is not the case, I would vote to retain its contributing status.
My thought, this is Chris, my thought would be that the structural soundness of the building is separate from the historic integrity that we're supposed to rule on. I mean, it might be that it continues to contribute to the significance of the district, but that it's physically unsound and keeping it in place is not reasonable. But to me, that's a separate issue and not the one that's before us today.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking for clarification about, exactly that. And according to the history statement, it says the owner, as a charter school, is concerned about the structural stability of the property after reviewing a cursory inspection report from last year. The owner is willing to look at alternatives to save the building. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would agree with Chris's assertion here that we're looking at the exterior. The exterior, in fact, looks pretty good in terms of structural integrity. But we're looking at the historic integrity, not the structural integrity, which we will do anyway as just a matter of course.
Yeah, this is Mark, and I've been just reviewing the National Register nomination as well as photographs and Google Street views of this. I think it should be noted that all of this building was added onto at several campaigns in 1929, 1941. It is the oldest and first building in the district, built in 1861. Yeah. So above and beyond it being, it was the anchor of this district, and was physically connected to Building 2 in 1929. So I think Dr. Bucky brought up the question of what would removing this do to the buildings behind it. If they're physically connected, that could have a broader ripple effect than we're anticipating. Short answer is yes, I think it contributes, and I think it's an important piece of this district.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting story because this was a residential neighborhood primarily and developed in the 1840s and 50s, I think, as a fairly high tone suburban, villa type places. And what happened was the Chamber of Commerce or whatever bought the site and developed it to attract business to Norwich and built around this middle class suburban villa, incorporating it into an industrial development. So it's an interest. It's one of the sort of unusual twists that make a place like this interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go, Jenny.
Cecilia,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
We got another vote.
That's mine, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. I just have oh sorry, did you want to
Nope,
check
nope.
discussion?
Yeah, I'll just say thank you all very much for this, and in the future, because I know that some of these packets go out hard copy. We'll add a couple things like numbering the pages, enumerating the photos and the pictures for each site to be reviewed, and include a district map if it's a contributing resource, like what Mark had put into the chat. So again, thank you all.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank God.
Good to see you.
I have a quick staff report, unless there's discussion or new business.
No? No new business?
Jenny, I have to apologize. This is John Herzan. I have to leave the meeting now. I have another appointment.
Yeah, I do too.
So I
Can you
will
put the staff
follow up with
report
you.
in a, yeah, can you put the staff report in a little blurb email?
Yeah, I'll email it. It's 3 topics. I have an update on our bylaws, just corrections going through the legislative process. I've already emailed you about the 2 new NHL actions from the Park Service, and I was just going to announce that we are starting our Olmsted project. So I'll just email that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Then I need a vote for adjournment. Anybody want to move?
I moved we adjourn.
I second it. That's it. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
The
Bye.
dog thanks us.
Mail is here.
Thank you, Jenny. Good meeting.